Hello. Today will be the first official podcast I'm calling the Bo Anderson Podcast. Very creative, obviously. And so it's going to be a long form video. Prepare yourself. And if you don't want to stick around, I don't blame you. So today it is hot. It has been hot. It is a Friday. And I've got some notes here. I'm just going to kind of go through, trying to keep it brief. In the beginning here, I'm going to do a brief biography of myself. Really, I've always lived in Texas. I'm born and raised in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I grew up in South Lake for a while, and then we moved out to East Texas to live with my grandparents in Lindale for a little bit. Forgive my dog. Hush. And then I graduated from Coppell. I played football. I went to Texas State on a scholarship for a year. Hush. And so, thank you. I met my wife, Julian, there, and so she finished school. I came home and went to work for my dad. My dad owns a roofing company. Started out doing a lot of residential, and then moved into commercial, isolated leak repair, and we did La Quintas for a real long time, and then we did some work for Bell Helicopter. And so after a while, we got slow and we phased out a little bit on Bell. I don't know if they do much work, and we lost our account with La Quinta after they sold. And so I was just a commercial flat roofer. We sprayed silicone out of big pumps. We had barrels of silicone, 55-gallon drums that we would bring on. You had a transfer pump that would pump it into the big pump. You had a compressor, big hoses, and we would spray acres and acres of roof, flat roof. And that was what I did through my 20s. Made some money and had some fun. And so, when in 2020, hemp became legal to grow in Texas. So we grew in a place down near San Marcos. My wife was actually living in Dallas at the time. And so she would drive down to visit me. And then after that season, we grew a bunch of big hemp plants and harvested them all. And it was a big badass run. We had all this flour. And then everybody was selling like Delta 8 or something. And, I worked around to try and find a buyer and never could find a buyer. I'm still holding on to, bud from 6 years ago. It's just CBD flower, which doesn't have the flavor that THC flower does. Anyway, so my wife and I moved in together in Cedar Hill, lived there for a while, and then we got married and moved out to East Texas, where my dad's little ranch is at. It was his dad's property that he bought, my grandpa bought kind of at the end of his life, ran some cows out there, sold off most of the land, and then there's a pretty big pond. And if you guys have followed the channel, you've seen it, or you'll see it in the future. And And so when we were living out there, I got into trapping. And so the first critter I trapped was like beavers. And just gonna not try and get off of here. We'll circle back to trapping in a second. Hush. I'm just gonna finish up with my little family life history. Is, you know, my wife and I got married, and then when we got pregnant, we wanted to be closer to her folks because my folks weren't out there in East Texas. We were just kind of alone out there. And so her folks live in Wichita Falls. We moved 30 minutes south of Wichita Falls in a little town called Archer City, which is where I am sitting now. Please. And so I have a lovely wife and child. My child, you know, we were trying to go for a natural birth. We were post-term. Our child aspirated on meconium. We had a C-section. They flew Matilda, my baby girl. She's like 1 now. So she's a toddler now, officially. And she's really smart, and nothing wrong with her, of course. But during the procedure, you know, they put something into her lung to draw something out, you know, and then they punctured the lining of her lung and then flew us to Cook Children's Hospital. And flew her, you know, and we were there for like a month. My folks live in town, so for the first week, I stayed in the hospital, of course, and then after she was more stable, but she was originally on an oscillator, and then she went down to a ventilator, then she went down to a CPAP, and then they, you know, and she had like a pneumothorax tube in her, and, you know, we had a little complication after we pulled it out the first time, because they put a second one in and it got messed up. So the third one was a pigtail, and we had to call it, you know, and then of course they're bothering us about vaccines and everything. And so I'll get into all of that later. But now I just wanted to stress that after a lot of careful decision making, and of course the good Lord has been on our side, we have a nice little life here. And so now that that's over, more or less, we'll get into my professional career. As I described earlier, I was a roofer. You know, I tried growing hemp, and then I decided when I liked trapping so much that I wanted to do a seasonal thing where I work mostly in the summers, and then in the winter I trap. You know, I don't make any money trapping, but a lot of people do make some money off the fur, or there's a lot of like predator control guys. And so I started a lawn maintenance deal. Really, it's Anderson Sprinkler and Landscape. And I started, you know, working for my folks, working for my wife's folks, family members and friends. And, you know, I don't have a whole lot of clients, and it's not a whole lot of money, but it gets me by. It's just bread and butter. And maybe in the future we'll talk more about some of the equipment I use, some of the methods that I use. And then more recently, I've gotten some equipment or gear for tree climbing and arborist work. And so, again, probably in the future we'll have some videos on some of my equipment and my methods, stuff like that. Right. But fortunately, with trapping and with tree trimming, a lot of that type of stuff, the internet makes it possible for me to do all that stuff. So, we're going to get into my political opinions based on, first through my passions, the things that affect me directly. My opinion is that hunting, fishing, and trapping, and of course, foraging and gathering are the original professions, right? They're the original ways to feed yourself. And so these are God-given rights. And then somehow, through some psychological operation, we've been fooled into conservation, and we pay the king's price for permission to do these things. And it's getting harder and harder, and I'll get into that. But, my thing is trapping, okay? And of course, they don't like trapping. Trapping's headed out the door. But I discovered trapping later on in life, and I realized the abundance of animals that are out there for the take. And it kind of woke me up to the whole psyop of, well, if everybody started getting after them, there'd be nothing left. Well, that's not true, because Next Gen Trapper, for instance, takes thousands of coons every season, and every season there's thousands more coons taking their place. How could that be? How could that be? It's because it's a never-ending renewable resource that, sure, the buffalo in times of the Industrial Revolution, when they needed leather belting and it was in high demand, but after electricity, there's really no excuse. And so this leads me into my political beliefs, which is basically, of course, that I voted for Trump 3 times, and then in this last term, of course, we're totally betrayed. And I guess it's the same thing that always happens. You have someone that's just lying. He's just gonna, but it's all a show, right? There's a controlled opposition. The mafia is working. They're manipulating markets, and so it's real corrupt. And we'll get into all that. But quickly, I wanted to briefly touch on my spiritual beliefs. So, I like to use the term knowing, as certain folks would say. I know there is a God, right? So I don't want to beef with the Christians when I say certain things. They're going to get all bent out of shape. But I like to use Christian terminology to help calm the Christians down. I'm a Christian, but most Christians wouldn't accept my view on things. I'm a collector of religions. I'm kind of a Buddhist, as well as I've been interested in traditional ceremonial rituals or magic, whatever you want to call it. My opinion is magic is like science, or all of these magnificent, miraculous things that we'll use sciencey words to describe, but really it's just magic. And then, I'm also taking an interest in Hermeticism or witchcraft, other types of ceremonial magic or ceremonial ritual. And we could go into some of that stuff now. So, first of all, many people would say, oh, look out. And it's like, sure, I completely agree. I'm just researching everything right now, and people are afraid to even open a book that has a certain symbol on it. This is just a shape. And so a shape or a symbol, if I say, this is like a belief that I hold true. If I say that I'm worshiping the God of love and light, and I say, we're praising this God, or we're going to give thanks to this God. I can't be fooled. Somebody can't tell me that I'm accidentally worshiping the wrong thing. I mean, there's certain debates that we can have, but like, for instance, people will say, oh, you know, when you unfold the cross, or when you fold the cross up, it makes a cube. And they'll want to make a thing about like you're unaware that you're worshiping the black cube of Saturn, you know, the hexagon or whatever. Strangeness, but I just believe, like, of course the intention of the individual is everything. So I'm gonna adjust this for the lighting. Is this better? Try not to hit you with the light so hard. Put my big old head in front of it. That doesn't help much. All right, hold on. This dusty ass table. Forgive me, guys. So, yeah, my belief is like Alan Watts or any of these people, like I'll say it in Christian terms, if we invite the Holy Spirit in, right, the Holy Spirit possesses us, right? We no longer exist. It's just the Holy Spirit, right? And then you know, I could say, I am the Holy Spirit. And people may say, okay. But if you would say, I am Jesus, or I am God, or I say you are God, then you would be, a lot of people are confused or would disagree with that. They have like a involuntary reaction to disagree. And, which is fine, you know. This is just my point of view, that clearly we have a lot of say in our life, right? We are we only experience life through our five senses. It can only be seen through us. You know, we are in His image. We are divine. You know, all of these things. And I like some of the concepts where they say, you know, it was Zoroaster or whatever, it says, there is a supreme good being of love and light. So then there must be the antithesis, which is the devil or whatever, the opposite. And then, you know, for instance, in witchcraft, the deities that are represented, according to Raymond Buckland, have their good and bad attributes. The Lord and the Lady are both good and bad, you know, which is like human beings and much more understandable, rational. I don't know. And so it's just a different way to look at it, but an interesting perspective. And yeah, I do think that we take a lot of things very literally, and all of this is meant to be taken spiritually, metaphorically, metaphysically, whatever. So I agree with Bill Donahue's interpretations of the Bible most of the time. Bill Donahue has passed, but he had a show called Hidden Meanings, and so I highly recommend. Also highly recommend Carpo 719. Joshua Orr has great knowledge. Mentioned some great things this week alone. Guy crushes it. So all this to say, you know, from our faith to everything, I believe that there's psyops everywhere, right? And they're trying to keep you from understanding that you have a ton of power. And, you know, through magic or meditation or all sorts of these methods, ceremonial methods, we can and just practical methods. We can influence our world, right? And also get information like from the other side. And so that kind of rounds up my spiritual beliefs, and I'm moving into the section that's called PSYOPs Everywhere, right? From our faith to, the thing about, for instance, God's chosen people, PSYOPs everywhere. The medical industry, they're trying to drum up the race war. All of the political arguments, none of it matters. So there's a lot of corruption. There's a lot of weeds that we have to sift through, and there's a lot of things going on right now that I want to discuss. So in YouTube, every little theme has its own little universe within YouTube. Trapping, arborist stuff. These are just things that are on my common feed, right? Trapping and arborist stuff right now is all over my feed, right? And so GunTube. GunTube is a very common thing most people understand. For those that don't understand, it's just veterans or civilians with guns who are doing reviews or shooting guns. Hickok 45 is one of the most famous, right? And so there's a lot of drama going on with GunTube right now, and some interesting Fed January 6th Fedsurrection type shit happening right now that I'm gonna talk about right now. So I follow PNW Gorilla. He's from Washington. He sells merch that says only traitors help invaders, right? Seems like a base guy. He's got a lot of good memes and posts, things like that. Very interesting guy, right? And I'm pretty much not on any of the GunTube stuff except for him. And he did a collab with Trench Grenade, a fella named Jack something or other. And in the beginning, I'm like, oh, I've seen this guy before. Supposedly he's an infantry guy, drill sergeant guy, knows what he's talking about. He's a young dude like me. And so I check in on his channel, because these days it's I wonder what everybody like that is feeling. Nobody's saying what we should be saying, which is we've been betrayed, Simple as that. There's the summary. So then Trench Grenade is putting out these urgent reports, State of the Union reports. And this is not like S2 Underground. S2 Underground, highly recommend. Click it. He's doing intel updates, and The Wire, which is all just brass tacks, bare bones, military news type shit. And Trench Grenade is doing a thing that's probably a lot of people are calling for, is the president's making a ton of money and has sold us out. He goes down the list of all the different political problems that we're facing at home. And he says things like the endless wars in the Middle East, we've all lost buddies. And so you feel for him, right? And he talks about a little bit about a resistance. And then he's buy a patch and join our Discord, right? And so I bought a patch and joined the Discord. And I not much going on in the Discord, a bunch of memes about the state of the country. And he does some deals with Garand Thumb. Garand Thumb is another really big gun tuber, okay? And so I thought it was interesting, him and Garand Thumb were collabing. and they're like motoring when they're talking. And at one point, Garand Thumb is like sniffling real hard. And I kind of raised my eyebrow and thought, are these guys? You know. And so then I find out a fella named Focus Trip. Highly recommend. Tune into Focus Trip, Valhalla VFT, and Vintage Warfare. These three guys are potentially not feds, right? But Garand Thumb and Trench Grenade are, and Dirty Civilian are feds or something like that, where what's going on is they're talking about a resistance. They're talking about conducting operations, networking, and the revolution, and shit that YouTube would shut right down, you know? So how's it up? And what was funny to me is Garand Thumb went and did this big collab about the resistance type of thing with Trench Grenade, and then like his latest thing was him doing basically a promotional video for the drone manufacturers. So that was when I like really started doing my research. Focus Trip, okay? Focus Trip and his boys. Focus Trip is a grandmaster in the USPCA championships, right? It's the United States Pistol Championships. And he's a grandmaster, which means he's obviously very good. And they caught Trench Grenade lying about winning competitions in and out of uniform. And he goes, are you accusing me of stolen valor? And this is the thing, if you're in the know, now that I am, he goes, it was another fellow on the thing, he goes, not real stolen valor, but USPCA stolen valor, which is worse. And since then, you know, shit has popped off, right? So first of all, they accused Trench Grenade. People allege that he was wearing a patch while he was in the service that was like a combat patch that he did not achieve and was punished accordingly by his commanding officer or whatever. And then, so he was actually stolen valor, real stolen valor, and USPCA stolen valor, which I completely agree is worse. And then Garand Thumb, who used to be skinny as a rail and is now juiced to the gills. You know, they did another deal Focus Trip did. In the Focus Clips channel, you'll find these things. I don't know if it's on Focus Trip's main channel, but you'll find a deal about Jason Wong. Okay, Jason Wong is a self-proclaimed international arms dealer, does imports and exports. His thing or channel or handle or whatever was called Hurricane Butterfly. And I don't know if these charges are convicted or just alleged, but it's rape, attempted strangulation. Probably can't even say that word on this thing, but whatever. And forcible insertion of a foreign object. So these are the three alleged, I'll say, charges for Jason Wong, Hurricane Butterfly, who has been seen with a bunch of people, but mainly hangs out with Garand Thumb. And Jason Wong has been busted, I believe convicted, for smuggling in Rufalin to the country. And in some of these old pictures with the two dudes and like four broads, they all look like they're having a real big time. You know, so Jason Wong and Garand Thumb, or Mike Jones, are interesting, to say the least. And like, I live in Texas. not everybody has automatic weapons and this and that. And so all that's to say, like, imports, exports, some guy named Wong, what are we letting that happen? That's like a strange thing, in my opinion. And he's real tight with Garand Thumb. Anyway, all this to say, be vigilant out there. I may make a video once I get my patch and shit in. It's like some cool looking shit, like America only. And it's like, that's what we're all feeling. And I don't know if he stole that from Valhalla VFT, because he's got similar merch that says America only. And yeah, so very interesting shit going on. And the shit that Dirty Civilian and all of them are really saying, the spooky thing is when they're like, you're going to die, but it's your duty. That's like a lot of what Garand Thumb and Trench Grenade are saying. In one of their videos, they said it like a ton of times. You're going to die, but this is your duty as a civilian or whatever. And the other thing is Dirty Civilian's like, we should be networking. And it like goes against what we think about when it's like, they're spying on everybody. If we start networking, we're just giving them the network, so I have been discussing moving to Mexico. Seriously, very seriously considering it. I mean, like, I'm moving to Mexico. And strangely, for a second, here comes this resistance talk, and I think maybe there's going to be military veterans that are going to stand up for our country. I'm an able-bodied man. Like, I can stand up and fight. What are we going to do? And they're like, talk to your local sheriff about, and my buddy goes, about the resistance? I go, yeah, doesn't it not make any fucking sense? So, yeah, those are the people. And they say a lot of true things, like, oh, F the ATF, and, but I think a little bit of it is like they're drumming up the race war. And it's a little bit of like a whites only type of thing, seems like, which, I live in Archer City because, Dallas is not what it used to be. But that concludes. The main thing I'm doing here is putting out a public service announcement for the January 6th Fedsurrection 2.0. There was a song that played today that was like, we need a new revolution because this one is a lie, right? I'm sure somebody can know that song. I'm in Harbor Freight, and I'm like, that's the exact thing. They're making a lie revolution. Stay tuned in, stay vigilant, gentlemen. Moving on. So the other psychological operation that I think is very important to understand, all of this has occurred because of our need to farm and ranch. We like agriculture. It's a strange, old thing. We have UT and A&M down here, the Longhorns, the ranchers, and the Aggies, right? The farmers. And it goes back to Cain and Abel, My opinion is this is a hobby or an assisted thing. We should not rely on this solely. It is fun to domesticate plants and animals. It should not be our main source of food, right? My opinion is, as I've said, the original profession is to hunt and gather, or, hunt, fish, trap, gather, forage, whatever I'm missing there. You get the picture. It's a primitive style thing that we should all be able to access. It's very important. I'm moving into now examples of government corruption. The main one for me, I think the main one that hits home for me is the medical industry, right? The medical industry cannot be compromised. It's literally designed to take care of the people that the Bible are like telling you to take care of. The women and the children and the elderly and the sick and the poor, right? The medical industry is completely compromised. You can look it up that the doctors have a conflict of interest when it comes to vaccines. The insurance you know, we were charged like $1 million or something. And then they're like, oh, well, you can get on Medicaid. You jump through the hoops. And then they're sticking the taxpayer with the bill. Well, that's still me. And that doesn't sit right with me, you know, so I digress. The medical system, the insurance, they charge whatever. The medical system can charge whatever because if the insurance is the taxpayer, nobody gives a shit. Okay? Don't forget that. Schools. I'll come back to this in just a little bit, but my thing is, no more schools, man. No more schools. Everybody needs to fuck that shit. Okay? Food, I don't need to talk about, is clearly fucked. Everybody knows that. Taxation, we're going to go back to schools. Taxation, there should be no taxation. There should be voluntary taxation. And the only people that should get paid are the sanitation workers. And that's it. Everybody else is on a voluntary basis. Okay? That's it. I know, crazy thoughts. Market manipulation, right? Which we know what we're talking about when we make something legal or illegal. They're going to war. They say we're done doing war. All the stock prices. It's disgusting. And immigration, which messes up all the labor markets. And, you know, I'm from Texas. And don't get me started. I'm like one of the only white. I'm the only white landscaper when you drive into Dallas. And there's a couple guys out here. There's a few different outfits out here that fellas that look like me. But most of them, if you guys are from the area, you know, or if you visit, you know, there is no immigration enforcement. But the highest accountability is upon us, you know, and there's no discretion for the police officer anymore. Back in the day, an old timer catch you with a little bit of pot and lets you off the hook. Now it's max accountability for us, and then I want to ask questions for officers about illegals, because I've been through an experience myself where I drove my mom's Cadillac to my wife's apartment in Dallas. The next morning my mom's Cadillac was stolen. We find it, you know, without the help of the police. OnStar was who helped us, and then of course they had to tell the police. So the police meet us there, and then they don't arrest the fella. They like kept us from bothering him. It was a very strange encounter. And this was probably 2020, maybe 2021. And so very strange encounter there. And then of course during the Biden administration, I'm sure they were all released or whatever, all these uninsured motorists. And now I'd like to ask, is there anything changed? When you find one, do you pick them up? You know, I'll tell you right now, because I know them all, they're not picking anyone up. And it's all a lie, right? So, and they keep coming, especially the ones from the Middle East. Okay, and so now is my official section to shame and condemn government titty babies. If you are on the government tit, if you work for the government or you're receiving a taxpayer check, however you receive it, you're wrong. Do better. Get a fucking job. Sincerely, a self-employed, hardworking, 30-year-old American heritage taxpayer. Go fuck yourself. And now we will move into addressing Tucker Carlson's 10 Commandments. So, of course, here's Tucker coming out of the woodwork, gonna save us all like every other rich kid, right? Who's told us lies for the last however long. I could go on for a long time, clearly, about all sorts of things. But we'll go through them quickly. I'll name the points and then we'll go back over them and I'll describe. So the 1 is fair, 2 is sovereign, 3 is productive, 4 is beautiful, 5 is healthy, 6 is honest, 7 is optimistic, 8 is wise, 9 is decent, 10 is united. And you know what I didn't hear there that I've got on here? 11, the one that actually matters, the only one, is accountable. And so we'll go through these. The first 4, at first glance, I have no problem with. Even with his little things that he says after fair, sovereign, productive, and beautiful. Sounds decent. Then he says healthy. And in his little description, he'll say universal sobriety, right? I am biased, obviously. I smoke pot. I think some folks could have a drink every now and then. I think people should be able to be their own daddy. And I'm sick and tired of somebody else, especially Tucker, who's sells nicotine pouches, which I've never used in my life and will never use because I see how they've taken hold of society. And yeah, talks a lot of shit about CBD outlets or whatever. And so 6 is honest, 7 is optimistic, 8 is wise. And then in wise, he says schools should teach. And you know my opinion about schools. There shouldn't be any schools. Everybody needs to raise their own kids. What a concept. Quit letting the government raise your children. What a concept, right? Decent. This is my favorite one. In the decent section, he says that the United States should pay restitution to non-combatants, right? Or to, you see what I'm saying, right? He's saying that, which on a first glance, it's like totally reasonable. We should pay for non-combatants, women and children that we've bombed in the Middle East or wherever, right? Non-combatants being like civilians. And first of all, my first thought is like, are we talking about the domestic non-combatants? Because there's been a lot of domestic non-combatants that have taken the heat from COVID. You know, my grandma was given remdesivir. And just people that have been stabbed or shot by the invaders or whoever. People that, criminals, violent criminals. I shouldn't air quote it. Violent criminals. I say criminals, and it's like violent criminals. Because those are real criminals, not criminals like they want to say me, that's a victimless crime, when they pick me up for having pot and a gun. Doesn't make any sense. They kidnap me and hold me for ransom, which is why I'd rather move to Mexico. And so he says the United States should pay restitution. That just means I'm paying restitution. Who's the United States? The U.S., us, that's me. You know? Why don't we make Don pay it? Don made the call. Don can pay it. Why doesn't he pay it? He just got $4 billion, I heard. So we'll let him pay restitution. Is that cool, Tucker? Don't know why you said I'm going to pay it. That's fucking retarded. And the last thing he says is united. And he says we should halt immigration until we find out the effects of AI. Whatever the fuck that means. We should halt immigration. You could have stopped there. And then AI is a separate thing, you know? And we're getting nuked with data centers over here. So, my conclusive point is point 11 that I'm adding to the list. And of course, I could go on for 101, you know, government corruption 101, accountability. We get no accountability. We have people that lie, and then there's no accountability. And so, I, I just want to challenge everybody, because it's a challenge, to take heart and don't give up. Keep moving forward. You know, the Camo Cowboy says, keep moving forward. And the good Lord willing, we'll see you on the trail, or we'll see you on the other side. This will conclude the first Bo Anderson podcast. If you'd like to support my work, please like and subscribe. Reach out to me, 214-957-2138 for all your tree trimming needs if you're in the North Texas area or wherever in the United States. And also I do landscaping and sprinkler repairs, lawn care, flower beds, planting trees, pulling trees, planting flowers, pulling flowers, you name it, I'll do it. And I got a buddy up the road that does machinery, mechanic work, big stuff. I was helping him with a skid steer the other day, a nice big old Bobcat, and all sorts of stuff like that. He does some automotive, but yeah, his specialty is kind of bigger stuff. So reach out if you need anything, or if you just want to chop it up. I'm very blessed, and so this is it from me. Trap or die.